Time now for our interview with Phil Savage, general manager of the Arizona Hotshots. Here we go. All right, as promised, we will join now by Phil Savage, general manager of the Arizona Hotshots. We talked about his resume and some of his former stops, but now he's going to be part of that great, I guess, sort of need for off-season football. I think there's a heck of a need personally. It's especially from the players and coaches and front office side, a great need to get more resources and more jobs when it comes to those different stages of the game. And joining us now, Phil Savage. Phil, welcome.
Randy, I hope you're doing well. Yeah, absolutely. This Alliance of American Football, I think it's a very unique concept, and I think it's got a real chance to not only get off the ground but thrive because it's not in competition with the NFL. If anything, it's going to be an augmentation, an addition to those that are striving to get back to the National Football League or to get their first opportunity, whether, as you mentioned it, as a player, a coach, or front office person.
Now, it's interesting timing to me, especially in light of what you talked about, that it's not really in conflict with the NFL from a player's standpoint. Now, your first games are February 2nd, right?
It's the weekend after the Super Bowl, so February 9th and 10th.
9th and 10th, okay. And it's a 10-game season, and you've got the playoffs. So everything will be pretty much over and done in a fairly compact window. But what people don't understand is you're going to do, about a month at San Antonio when it comes to a training camp?
Yeah, we're going to have 3.5 to 4 weeks of training camp in San Antonio. All 8 teams of the Alliance will be there in the same city. We'll have our own hotels, our own practice sites. There will be some co-opt practices and then a couple of, quote, preseason games before we all leave San Antonio for our respective cities. But, Randy, I really think the league has a chance to succeed for 3 reasons. Number one, they've got bona fide, real football people involved at the leadership positions, coaches, GMs, and then in the front office of the league. There's over 470 years of NFL experience across those positions. Secondly, the schedule that you mentioned starts the weekend after the Super Bowl, ends the weekend of the NFL draft. So a player can come into our league, play for 10 weeks, get 10 weeks of practice time, get some game film current, and then go to the NFL May the 1st and not miss any of the offseason. Because as you know, when the NFL got the new collective bargaining agreement in place, there's really no off-season training. Players can't even report to their own NFL facility until the 3rd or 4th week of April.
Right.
So these players in the Alliance are not going to miss anything. And then the third piece of it is I think there is a real need for development. Look, when you were playing football, there were no limitations on spring practice and two-a-days during summer camp. And your resume coming out of college into the NFL was much deeper, much thicker than the resume of a player who comes into pro football now after 3 years as a junior. No spring ball or limited spring practices, no two-a-days. There's a limitation on how much time they can spend in the offices watching tape. So I think that while the skill set and size and speed may be better than it's ever been, I think the actual ability to play the game is probably less for guys coming into the pro ranks now than ever before.
Yeah, and when I first saw Charlie Ebersol and company at the first press conference start talking about the Alliance, what really caught my attention, which is unusual, I think, for so many of these other football entities that have tried to make things work in the spring/off season, is they had direct relationship with CBS and CBS Sports Network, which gives them an outlet for their stuff guaranteed, which I thought was fabulous and really gives so many of those players and the coaches you're talking about sort of a place to be seen.
No doubt. As I've gone through this fall season and people say, hey, what are you up to these days? And I say, yeah, I'm the GM of the Arizona Hot Shots in the Alliance. They say, well, is it on television? That's
Yeah.
one of the first questions, like your regular fan wants to ask, or a media member. Hey, where can I find it? And the first game will be on what I call Big CBS. The championship game on April the 27th from Las Vegas will be on Big CBS, and then everything in between will be on CBS Sports Network. So there is an outlet. AAF.com will have all of the streaming applications and those sorts of things. So it's going to get a lot of coverage. And, probably the most unique thing about it is that while hundreds of teams are playing this fall, there's only going to be 8 teams playing football in the spring in terms of games that really count. So I think it's going to elicit a lot of attention. And I will tell you this, I went to 14 NFL training camps in August as we were looking at, potential players for our league, guys that were going to fall out of the NFL and not make those final rosters. And every club that I visited, either the head coach, the GM, or personnel director said, hey, we're going to be scouting this league intensively because we think a guy that goes there and gets 10 games of experience may be more valuable to us than some of the free agents that we're going to draw out of college next April after the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you an example, and you just got done doing this. How did the quarterback camp, the quarterback evaluation process, you were down in San Antonio, the 12th, 13th, and 14th?
Yeah, we had really 4 days of a quarterback camp, and this was about 50 some odd QBs from, all different levels, Randy. I mean, there were guys there like Christian Hackenberg, who just got released from the Bengals like a week ago, and all the way, to guys from very small schools that never have gotten a chance to get in an NFL camp. But there's some live arms out there, and we had a chance to interview them just like you would at the Combine in Indianapolis. And then, of course, they had a throwing workout spread across 2 days. So next Tuesday night, November the 27th, again in Las Vegas, we're going to have a quarterback-specific draft for the Alliance. But some recognizable names like Trevor Knight from Texas A&M was there. Zach Mettenberger from LSU was there. Scott Tolzien from Wisconsin, who's had a long career in the NFL as a backup. He was part of the Combine. Josh Johnson, who's been in the league for the last 10 years until this 2018 season, was part of it. So it was a real interesting mix of passers from all different kinds of backgrounds.
And I know my fellow UCLA Bruin and CBS Sports cohort, Rick Neuheisel, is going to be the coach of your team. How intensive has that relationship developed here as you've gone forward?
Well, it's interesting when Bill Polian, the co-founder with Charlie Ebersol, started to vet people for these different positions. He reached out to Rick as far as being a coach, and he reached out to me independent of each other as far as being a GM. And this was all down at the Senior Bowl last year in Mobile. And I said, Bill, I got to get through this game, and then let me circle back with you. And literally about 3 weeks later, I reached out to Rick simultaneously. I'm not kidding you. Within 5 minutes, he's trying to call me because Rick said, I only want to coach if Phil Savage can be my GM. And I said, I only want to do this if Rick can be my head coach. So we had worked together at UCLA, a long time ago, but we've maintained this friendship. And it's been a seamless partnership. We've got Hugh Freeze as our offensive coordinator from Ole Miss. We've got Nick Aliotti from Oregon as our defensive coordinator. And we've already had one set of meetings where there just was already a lot of camaraderie. We think we're going to win. We think we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
That's great. That's great stuff. Hey, down here where I was just doing my sports, we were talking about the sports segment we do, and it's a lot of college football. And many college football fans here in the South associate you with the last few years working as the color man for the Alabama Crimson Tide. How's it been having your fall kind of quote unquote off?
Yeah, after 9 seasons, I mean, it's hard to believe it went by that fast, but 9 seasons, 5 national championships. I mean, it was quite a run. And just once we got into the alliance and started to lay out really what the calendar was going to be and some of the requirements during the fall, and just the fact that I have younger children, I just felt like that it was something that I had to get. Something had to give. I've missed the Saturdays, particularly being able to talk about Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, Randy, I'm not sure if you got a chance to see him in person, but he's a sensation. He's a generational type talent at the quarterback position because of his instincts, his eyes, his vision, and just his accuracy with the ball. So I've missed being able to talk about him on a week-to-week basis and missed the game action, but I've treasured the time I've had to be able to spend with my family because, look, all of us are going to be part of this spring league February, March, and April. So we knew that we would be away from our homes during that part of the year. But Alabama's having another big-time season. There's no reason to think that they're not going to end up in the college football playoff unless they were just to get blown out by Georgia. I think even if they lost by less than a touchdown, I think they probably get in.
Yeah.
And they're poised to go win another national title in a much different way than they ever have before. It's a very, very much an offensive-driven team, unlike any of the previous 11 teams that Nick Saban has coached there in Tuscaloosa.
Now, in your 9 years, and you've been around some pretty impressive, or a pretty impressive resume of football people in your career, but in your 9 years being around Nick Saban and how he sort of goes about his process and his business of football and the way he approaches it at Alabama, what would you say is the most or the largest misconception about Nick?
Oh, wow. The biggest misconception about Nick Saban is probably that he doesn't have much of a sense of humor, and he actually does behind the scenes and with his staff and coach. You don't see it very often in public. But behind the scenes, he can give it out and take it some amongst the staff. So that part is not seen much by the public. Of course, I wrote a book about my experiences there, 4th and goal every day, and I just thought that phrase encapsulated what Bama football has been under Nick Saban. They have a specific goal literally for every day of the year, and the most impressive thing about him in that program is the fact that he's able to get 100 plus players and 30 or 40 staff members all on the same page, pulling in the same direction with the same goals, the same language publicly, to go and try to not focus on winning, but to play to their standard, to play these faceless and nameless opponents week in, week out. It's been really phenomenal to watch, and it'll be an era of football that's referenced for many years to come.
That's great. Hey, Phil, thank you so much. Good luck. Good luck to you. Good luck to Arizona Hotshots and Rick Neuheisel and company, and enjoy that 2-year-old and that 7-year-old until things get crazy.
All right, Randy, you got to come and see us Bruins there with the Arizona Hotshots this spring.
There you go. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Good deal.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you so much. So we're all a little smarter. We've learned about the Alliance. We've learned about Alabama. And we know how some of this stuff works. Thank you, Phil.